lives, do we not need musicians? Do we not need people who bring music, who have gifts and bring talents? I mean, I just want to call out Carolina, who brings that keyboard, and Alejandro, who brings that bass every Sunday, and Ishmael, back from world tours. I mean, he's gone sometimes. You were playing for Blondie last time. I mean, the guy goes all over the world. But when he's here, man, my soul was getting some rhythm to it. There was some happening. And then, not to mention JB on the guitar. You know, JB had a live show, solo show this week down in Brooklyn. It's awesome. Not to mention Keyshawn and Ray. Every week, leading the rehearsal. Ashley and Allison and Lisa and Rebecca, and who else is singing today? Everybody. All of us. I was singing too. But there's just, we forget to recognize how much we need each other. We take it for granted. We take, every week we get music, and we need each other. We need each other. The work we put in, the work they put in, the work we put in makes a difference in people's lives. Without that gift sharing, then our lives get very stale. So I just give thanks for the people in our lives that we need, that are making a difference. But, the thing is, sometimes we get tired of people too. I know we need people and all, but sometimes people can just be frustrating. Do you ever get tired of dealing with human nonsense? That human ego, that narrow-mindedness, that just general crankiness that people can bring into a space? Aren't there times when you'd just rather go home and watch TV? Well, you're not alone. Because the average person in this country spends 39 minutes a day interacting with people. Family, friends, social engagements, 39 minutes a day, and 2 hours and 44 minutes a day watching TV. That's the average. We are an individualistic culture. And it's becoming more and more so. Ruth Whitman writes an article in the New York Times this past week about the trend toward individualism, particularly in the self-help industry and in spirituality, in popular spirituality. She talks about the slogans that are popular these days. Happiness is determined not by what's happening around you, but what's happening inside you. Happiness should not depend on other people. Happiness is an inside job. And there's some truth to some of that. But there is a definite movement towards a more individualistic spirituality and away from a communal worship, a communal building of faith community. She was talking in the article about happiness apps that you can get for your phone. Now, I've taken individualism to an extreme, but you can get an app for your phone that will bring you happiness. So, well, there's lots of different options. One, I'm glad you asked that, young lady. Actually, there are a lot of options. There's some that will provide regular pictures of puppies and sunsets. That's one option. There are some that will guide you in gratitude. There's apparently hundreds of these out on the market. She chose one that would bring her regular positive affirmations that she could repeat. So her phone would buzz and, I am beautiful. Her phone would buzz, I am enough. And she said she got so frustrated because her phone would ring and she thought it was a person calling her. And then it was this app saying, I am enough. And she would snarl, I am enough, I am enough. When really she wanted a phone call. In fact, she says the key to happiness is not turning inward. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't need to turn inward from time to time. We do. We need to replenish. We need silent retreats. We need silent meditation. We need times to be alone. But she says the source of happiness is actually our relationships with people. And there's study after study that shows that health, happiness, all of this is related to our relationships with people. That in fact, isolation is as dangerous as smoking to our health. We were looking when we did that whole thing around the blue zones, that one of the, in addition to all the dietary and exercise components to health, is the component of relationships, being in regular relationship with each other. So we can get that, and most of us probably could go with that. But the question and the challenge is how to do it. How do we do it? The key is on good relationships. Bad relationships don't necessarily make us happier. Good relationships. How does that happen? How do we build these relationships in our lives? So that's what we're going to focus on this morning. And we're going to focus on this teaching from Jesus, which is a how to build relationships. It's not easy stuff. There's nothing warm and fuzzy about this teaching this morning. It's hard. Love your enemies. Who wants to love their enemies? I mean, it's hard stuff. But it is teaching that can bring us to relationships, powerful relationships in the actual world in which we live. We'd all love to be in relationship with that person who is so nice to us all the time, that person who's constantly affirming us, that person who makes us great food, and that person who's all, we love that relationship. But Jesus is like, all right, anybody can get that relationship. That's like 101. But we need to be in relationship with a wider array of people. And there's a way to build relationship that is around three areas, and we're going to talk about those three this morning. The first one is loving others. What does it mean to love others? The second one is loving God. What does it mean to love God? And how does loving God transform our relationship with others? And the third one is, we all know what the other one's coming. We all know the teaching of Jesus. It's love ourselves. Love ourselves. And how does that become a foundation for loving one another? So we're going to look at each of these this morning. First of all, loving others. And the teaching that Jesus puts out is very clear. Do unto others as you would like them to do to you. That's not where we usually are. Where we usually are is do unto others as they have done to us. Right? That's what's in the emotional makeup of ourselves. People have done stuff to us. We've been hurt, and we carry that hurt with us. We are defensive in certain situations. There are, you get on the phone. I was on the subway the other day, and this guy was just standing on my foot. And I was going, sir, that's my foot. And he was like, why is it there? I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm going back to sleep. So you get defensive. And you need to defend yourself. There's situations. You get in situations where you don't feel safe to be, open. So we do unto others as they have done to us. And we're on the lookout for who's going to do what to us when, so we can defend ourselves from it. But the teaching here is inviting us to change the focus, to turn the focus away from what others have done to us and change the focus to how we are treating other people. I'm not nearly as reflective and judgmental about how I treat other people as I am about how they're treating me. If somebody doesn't treat me right, I'm on it like that. If somebody, even if there's even a whiff in the air of some possible insincerity, I'm all over it. I have high level of sensitivity to how other people are treating me. But I don't know that I'm that sensitive or reflecting to how I'm treating other people. How did they hear those words I said? I know how I meant them in my head, but, how did they come across? I didn't get to this or do that or something, how did the person perceive it? Was that, did they feel that I really slighted them? Or, I'm not nearly as sensitive to that as I am to how I'm perceiving what's being done to me. So that's the shift Jesus is inviting us to think about, and he's talking about it in the extreme. In the extreme. How are you treating your enemy? Even the person that has hurt you, even the person that you have stuff around, even the person that triggers you every time you see him walk in the door. How am I relating toward that person? And that's a big shift. If I was more focused on my behavior toward others than I was on their behavior toward me, that would shift the way I am in the world in a huge way. And it's not an easy thing to do, but that's the invitation. The real reward is in being kind to others who are not being kind to us. Now, I want to just separate this a little bit from, this is not an invitation to accept injustice and oppression. There are systems that are operating in the world that are toxic to us, toxic to human community. And we need to be standing up to those. But I think too often we're in that mode even when we're in individual relationships that people we're trying to work with, be comrades with, be in the struggle with. We're super tuned in to, I don't just want somebody who's like 80% with me. I need people who are 98. I'm up in that 98%. I don't, Don't be so judgmental, Jesus is inviting us. Don't be so condemning. And maybe people won't judge you and condemn you. On the other hand, maybe they will. But the shift is to do it even regardless. I have had the experience many times of being surprised that what I thought was not potential for relationship turns into great potential for relationship. I don't always know what's going on in somebody's head. We are such complicated beings. There is so much, that we cannot really understand about the way we interact with each other. So Jesus is inviting us to really give one another the benefit of the doubt. That is so critical. To really build relationship, to be able to go that extra mile and give one another the benefit of the doubt. Now, the method for going in this direction, it's great to say that's where we need to go. We need to be more focused on how I'm treating other people than how they're treating me. But how do we make that shift? Because we're so wired to, I'm so immediately experiencing anything that's done to me, but not necessarily experiencing what I'm doing to someone else in the same way. It's moving the focus, not so much to how others are treating us, but to how God is treating us. And this is also a challenging shift. Jesus says, be merciful to others as God is merciful. Don't be unmerciful to others as others are unmerciful to me, but be merciful to others as God is merciful to me. How is your relationship with God? God is mercy. God is forgiveness. God is compassion. God is love. The more I'm in tune and in touch with my relationship with God, the more I'm in touch with my own belovedness. My true nature is belovedness. And that nature comes in my relationship with God, not necessarily in the way I'm named by other people. So Jesus is inviting us to get down deep into that relationship with God so that we can be merciful to others as God is merciful to us. So we can forgive others as God forgives us. So that requires spending a little time in that love. I mean, how much time do we spend on TV vis-a-vis how much time we spend in our relationship with God, in prayer with God? I mean, I could watch 2 episodes of Scandal, and that's not necessarily going to take my compassion quotient up higher. But man, can you even consider the amount of time, I don't know, how long is that show? It's like an hour? Is it an hour? Can you imagine 2 episodes with God? Can you imagine 2 episodes of Scandal spent instead in meditation with God? I mean, most of us couldn't do that. You know, I have to really work up to get to 30 minutes. I mean, a lot of us are around that 5-10 minute range. You know, 5-10 minutes, and boy, we're getting real boring. I don't know if I can keep doing this. It retunes. Our society is so dramatic. Our society is so sensational. Everything is boom, 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 boom. A lot of times our relationship with God is very subtle. Connecting with God is about being in tune with very subtle movements. My experience with God is often I have to reflect like a couple of days later to even be aware of the shift that happened from that time of meditation. You know, I'm asking God for something, I'm praying about something that's troubling me, and a lot of times if I'm reflective about that a day later, 2 days later, I recognize that some actually shifted. Some actually changed. But it's not coming, you know, in an advertisement. It's not coming on Facebook. It's not coming in my face. It's going to be something that I'm going to really need to be retuned to a different sensitivity, a different wavelength, to even recognize the shift that prayer is making in my life. So how much time, how much energy, how much focus, how much discipline do we have around our relationship with God? And what difference is that making in the way I can relate with others? Faith community is designed as community centered on the way God is treating us rather than the way others are treating us. That's the nature and the difference of faith community. Faith community, as imperfectly as we do it, we are here connecting with one another in connection with our relationship with God, not in connection with our defensiveness about protecting ourselves about how others are going to treat us. Now that takes a lot of work. We're invited to be our whole self. But to be your whole self takes a lot of trust. You know, you don't just kind of put stuff out that you've put out before and gotten slapped around about. You have to have some kind of sense that you're in a community of people that can hear you for who you are and respect that. And so that's a lot of our work here. That's a lot of what we do around conversation circles. That's a lot of what happens after worship, is just really practicing that very difficult and countercultural practice of trusting, not condemning, listen non-judgmentally, listening with compassion, not necessarily giving advice, and really loving one another, really hearing one another. Love yourself. There's so many different ways we can think about loving ourselves. I want to share 4 strategies that come out of the book Emergent Strategies by Adrienne Maree Brown. This whole series has been focused on the chapters that she's moving us through. First, around fractal, what happens at the smallest scale reverberates to a larger scale, so really creating the vision in our community. And then second, intentional adaptation, intentionally adapting to change in our world. And then today, interdependence. Realizing that if our movements are going to grow, if our communities are going to thrive, if our families are going to be healthy, we need to learn to be interdependent. And we rankle against being interdependent. We want to be independent. Our culture rewards independence. Our culture rewards the one who can compete with others, who can win, who can rise above others. Interdependence moves against that competitive edge. To be interdependent with one another, and she suggests 4 particular ways that are very connected with the scripture reading. The first one, she says, is to be seen. To be interdependent in community is to be seen. Many of us have a hard time allowing ourselves to be seen. We have things about us that we want to hide. We are very selective about what we want to be seen. We have a mask that maybe shifts a little bit how somebody might perceive what's being seen. It's very difficult to open yourself. And the teaching of Jesus about do not condemn, do not judge, opens up the possibility of being seen. If we can be in a community where we're not about condemning one another, that we're about really listening to one another, really getting to know the full, complicated, complex nature of one another, really appreciating one another, really seeing the goodness in one another, then it's a whole lot easier to want to come and be seen. We talk every week about you don't have to hide anything. You bring your whole self, all of what's going on, all of who you are into this space. But the other side of that is that we then become the community that receives that, so that it's so great to be seen. Good to be seen. Second thing she suggests is to be wrong. If we're going to learn to be interdependent, we got to be wrong. Let me rephrase that. We already are wrong. We got to admit to being wrong. Now, there's not a person in here that I know of, there may be, some people, certainly not me, that has never been wrong. I don't know. If somebody has, I'd be interested. But it's so hard to admit you're wrong. And isn't it great when you know you're right and you can just go in? You can really go in on being right. You can just hit it with all cylinders because you are so right. So she's saying the kind of whole be wrong thing might temper that a little bit. But the other thing is about like just when you're wrong, when you got a blind spot. You just didn't see that in a way that was helpful. You did something maybe out of impulse, maybe out of hurt, whatever. Being wrong is so critical to building interdependent community because when I am wrong, I need somebody else. I love, the sermons where I forget my next word are the greatest. Because when I forget that word and somebody gives it to me, that's like magic. Then we have a community sermon. Being wrong, she says, being wrong and admitting being wrong is one of the most powerful, fruitful fields of community building that there is. To be able to admit that we're wrong opens up the field of interdependence. Also opens up the possibility of forgiveness. Jesus says, forgive one another and receive forgiveness. Forgiveness may be the most important key to community building that there is, and it's so hard. In the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says, every day you ought to be praying, God, forgive me my sins as I forgive those who sin against me. Forgive me my debts as I forgive those who are my debtors. That constant process of forgiveness is so important toward building relationships, so that we can be honest, so that we can be wrong with one another and realize that that doesn't end relationship. Third, she says, is to accept our inner multitudes. Took me a while to grasp this, but I love it. Accept our inner multitudes. We are not one, we are many inside. Right? I give you a great example for me. I am working really hard to stop sugar in my life. I have become convinced that sugar is a great health hazard. I know it's been connected with some things that I've struggled with health-wise. I am all in around ending sugar in my life, processed sugar, and I love, love, love a piece of key lime pie with a little ice cream on top. So I am a bundle of contradictions. And there's so many other kinds of examples. I want to be more disciplined in my life. I really want to be more disciplined. Lisa and I, well, I shouldn't talk about that because Lisa and I are so much alike, it's really scary. But we both tried to be disciplined together. And we both brought these journals, and we were going to write every day in our journal, and it was going to keep us on track. Man, I can't remember the last time I wrote in that journal. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. But I have contradictory impulses. I want to be more disciplined. I want to be more effective in my work. I don't want to be so disorganized. And I also love to be free. I love to be free to the point of chaos sometimes. And these are contradictory impulses that keep me a very strange, complex being. And all of us have multiple things going on in our lives. And then the last one she talks about is receiving and asking for what I need. Can you ask for what you need? You know what you need, but can you ask for it? And can you receive it with grace? I have this friend of mine that has offered on Facebook. He's got a doctorate, but he's so radical that they keep kicking him out of every university he tries to teach in. So he's finally dubbed himself the homeless professor. And he wants to start a writing group. He wants to lead 5 people in writing what they're called to write. And when he put that up, I was just like, man, I should really do that. That'd be so great to be in an accountable writing group. I should do that. He and I have had this relationship since seminary that's so powerful. He is so great at, like, really helping me around stuff. And I started thinking of all these reasons why I shouldn't. He's offering it free as a ministry. Oh, boy, receive it free? Man, what am I going to owe him? It's just amazing how you get stuck, and it's just nonsense. But I literally, for half an hour, I was just like coming up with all these reasons why I shouldn't do it. And it's perfect. And finally, I just said, yeah, I'd love to do it if you still got space. And he was like, that's awesome, And now I'm energized around it. But how hard it is to ask for what we need. How hard it is to receive what we need. Because it goes against the grain of independence. It takes us into interdependence. We're so ingrained in our society around being independent. Interdependence relies on us asking for and receiving. I had such an awesome conversation with an old friend this week. And it was so healing. We talked about stuff that we'd both been through, that we kind of had a similar experience around. And, there were several occasions in that conversation that tears would start to well up in my eyes, that I would realize that I was connecting around something that I had not been able to process earlier for years. That conversation brought me a healing that I could not have gotten without that conversation. Would not have happened. Those conversations that we have, those relationships that we have, the offers that we get to receive great things are so important, so critical too. We need each other to survive. That's how the song puts it. Certainly to thrive. So I want to invite us to receive the love of God. That's one of the hardest starting points, is just to receive the love of God. We come up with all kinds of reasons why we're not worthy. Why is it even real anyway? Would it even make a difference anyway? Well, we can open ourselves to it and see what happens. I want to just invite us to receive the love of God and receive our belovedness. We are created beloved. That is our relationship with our Creator. To receive our belovedness fills us up with a love that we can then begin to share with others, so that we can operate out of the love, a full well of love. Helps us to transcend the defensiveness in our human relationships. So I invite us to pray as openly as we can. Posture, feet, arms, open, hands, minds, spirits, breathing, allowing air to flow in and out freely. Just remembering for a second that God provides every breath, that every breath is not promised, but it just keeps coming. And it's so delicious when it comes in. And so energizing each breath. Take one good breath and just feel the energy that just pulses through your body. Become attuned to the subtle ways. Oh God, you dance all around. So often I am unaware, and yet you dance around. You're inviting me, loving me, caring for me. Oh God, we receive your love today. We accept your love. We accept your forgiveness for that thing that's so hard to let go of. For that guilt, that shame, we receive your love, melting it away, melting that shame, melting that guilt away in belovedness. God, we thank you for your love. We thank you, God, for this creation that you've made so attuned to life, air and water and cleanliness, plants that give off what we breathe. God, we open ourselves to your love. And we receive the name beloved. I am not my shame. I am not my faults. I am not my insecurities. I am not my failures. I am not my resentment. I am beloved. Let's all say it together. 1, 2, 3. I am beloved. That is the truth, God, about who you have created us to be. And we open ourselves to living in that truth, in our belovedness, to receive it as it is given freely. Oh God, we open ourselves to the healing as we receive the gifts of your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.